송은근 TV 책 속 한 장면. 오늘 책은 브렛 크리스토퍼스의 포트폴리오 속의 우리의 삶. 저는 이제 포트폴리오에 맡긴 우리들의 삶이라고 번역을 했는데요. 이제 자산관리 자본주의를 조금 이해하는 데 도움이 돼서 한 장면을 가져왔습니다. 뒤에 볼 동영상은 크리스토퍼스가 직접 얘기하는 이 책을 쓰게 된 동기에 대한 목적이랄까요? 이 얘기를 세 가지로 나눠서 하고 있는데, 하나는 이제 자산운용사들이 1990년대 이후, 특히 이제 2008년 금융위기 이후에 어떻게 그 자산관리 회사 또는 자산운용사들을 운영하고 있는지에 대한 그런 작동 원리를 규명하는 것이고, 두 번째는 조금 더 역사적으로 자산관리 회사들이 어떻게 탄생했나, 이머전스의 문제. 세 번째는 자산관리 회사들이 이제 자신들의 행동을 합리화하기 위해서 어떤 주장을 펼치는지, 그리고 그에 대한 반박, 이 얘기를 이제 담고 있습니다. 첫 번째와 관련해서 이 그림은 이제 이 브라운이 자산관리 자본주의란 말을 한 사람으로 이제 유명한 사람인데, 이 자산관리 회사들이 실제로 기업의 주식을 소유하면서 어떤 이제 과정을 거쳐서 자본을 투자하고 다시 수익을 회수하는 그림을 보여주고 있고요. 이 크리스토퍼스는 전통적으로 90년대 이전에는 기업 주식이나 채권 등 금융자산에 이 자산관리자 회사들이 투자를 했다면, 이제는 그 투자 대상을 넓혀서 주택이라든지 사회기반시설이라든지 환경과 관련해서, 특히 기후위기와 관련해서 시급히 필요한 이런 인프라들이 필요한데, 그런 인프라들을 대해서 투자를 한다. 이걸 조금 더 확대해 보면 최근에 이제 인공지능 인프라까지도 이런 자산관리 회사들이 투자 대상을 포트폴리오라고 하겠죠. 넓힌다고 볼 수 있겠습니다. 크리스토퍼스의 얘기로 직접 들어보겠습니다.
I think I had three main objectives with the book. And I'm going to talk very briefly about each of those and what I try to do in terms of those three objectives. So the first of those is an exercise in elucidation, just trying to kind of explain how it works. It's kind of a complex world. It's kind of a hidden world. And so I think one of the objectives of the book, in fact, probably the main objective, is just kind of to bring it into the light and to explain what's going on there. So the way in which this works is that you have these firms who are asset managers whose business is essentially very, very straightforward. All asset managers, whatever they're investing in, their business is essentially taking other people's money, so taking money from either from the likes of you and I, or more often from big institutions like pension funds, sovereign wealth funds or something, and carrying out investment on their behalf, essentially. So most of the investment that asset managers do, this is kind of the key point, and in some cases all of the investment they do is with other people's money. It's not with their own money. Often it will be a small amount will be theirs, but for the most part it's others. That's the business model. And they carry out that investment through a series of different investment vehicles that they establish for that purposes, the most common of which is investment funds of various types. So that's why asset managers are often also called fund managers, because they manage funds. It's funds through which they carry out that investment. So how do they make money? Well, the main way they make money, because it's not their money that they're investing, is through earning fees. And there is a whole litany of different fees that those who they are carrying out the investment for pay. But those fees, when it comes to investment in housing and infrastructure, are of two main types. So the first is a simple management fee. So say, for example, I am a trustee of a big pension fund, a big public pension fund, and I go to Macquarie and I say, okay, here is $100 million for you to invest in infrastructure, for you to return to me in 10 years' time with a nice big juicy profit. So I will pay a fee that is typically calculated as a percentage of that 100 million. And I'll pay that every year. And historically, it's been around 2%, 1.5 to 2% in this type of investment. So I'm going to make myself looking stupid here by not being able to work out. So 2% of 100 million. So I'll pay Macquarie $2 million every year to carry out that investment on my behalf. And so it gets that guaranteed every year for the next 10 years, as long as I keep that money invested with them. So that's the main one, is a simple management fee. The other one is a performance fee, which basically means that if Macquarie makes a big, nice, juicy profit for me through that investment, I will pay them a share of that profit. And And so the main form in which that's historically existed is something that many of you will have heard of. It's called carried interest, or carry for short. And again, historically, the standard figure for that was 20%. So 20% of any profit, of any realized gains that the asset manager makes for me, for my investment, I will pay back to them. And usually there's a hurdle rate. So you don't pay that performance fee unless they secure a minimum level of return of, say, 6 or 7%. So management fees and performance fees, that's my meat and drink. That's how I make money as an asset manager. The last thing I want to say, I mean, there's much more I could say, and I'm happy to field any types of questions about the business model. But the last one, because I think it's very, very important, is that, say, again, I'm sticking to Macquarie here, but you could be any asset manager. Say I, as Macquarie, decide that I'm going to invest in a solar farm, for example, that sells electricity into the wholesale electricity markets, and that solar farm has been around for 5 or 6 years. And say I use one of my infrastructure funds to do that, and if that solar farm is going to cost £50 million, what I will not do is take all 50 million from the fund that I've raised from external investors to pay for that. What I'll typically do is I'll take maybe £15 million from that fund, and I'll supplement it with £35 million of borrowing. So, all of which is a way of saying that most of these investments, controlling investments in infrastructure and housing, are leveraged. They are leveraged with debt financing as well as equity financing. And historically in the infrastructure space, with these types of funds, that might be anywhere between 60 to 80% would be debt. And obviously one of the important things to realise about that is that debt does not become debt that is owed by Macquarie or by the fund that it has been raised. Macquarie will establish a holding company to own that solar farm, and the debt sits on the balance sheet of the holding company. So if the business, makes a mess of things and loses money and goes into liquidation, it's not Macquarie that's on the hook for that. So the debt is distanced from the asset manager in all these cases. It's the classic private equity model transplanted into the real estate and infrastructure space. So that's the first thing, basic stuff about how it works. That's a big part of the book.